Hi, welcome to class. We're the only two right now, but the other ones will show up eventually, right? I hate my life. I hate my life. A Professor Sunrise Productions! Hello class, Professor Sunrise here. As you've all hopefully noticed, the ban list is out. So in this video, I'm just gonna go over my first impression about the ban list, talk about every hit, talking about if it's going to matter or it's probably not going to matter, and I'm gonna give my first meta impression of what the meta will look like, and of course I'm still gonna talk about how Virtual is getting hit by this ban list exactly. So without further ado, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave some feedback down below in the comment section. Let's get right into the ban list. So here we are at the Forbidden section. As to no surprise, so basically anyone Fairy Tail Snow got banned. It was a cute experiment. It was fine for a few formats and like base dot decks, but now with it being so strong at the elements, this is definitely a very good hit. And I'm very glad it's hit because both Sprite and Virtual World heavily like this not being in the format, even though Virtual World does lose it. In the list I've been running lately, or like lately, I would say. But this was just a nice extra because we were playing Beatrice, but the deck is super fine even without the snow. It just loses a little more to Super Poly Dark Ruler now, because you don't have that extra insurance if your Cypher gets stopped, for example, or if you get heavily hand trapped and you end on Beatrice, you cannot end on the snow now. But honestly, this is not too big of a deal. It's just one brick less the deck plays now. Ronan Totem Band, this is very interesting. I for sure thought they were going to hit totally awesome. But Ronan Totem Band basically makes the swap the Frog engine, I think, worthless in Sprite. Maybe you could get away with it playing in the Brave Sprite list, where you could maybe play it as a level 2 extender. But I don't think it's worth it to play it. And also with the new support coming out for Sprite, you don't really need Nimble Angler enablers anymore, because you can just dump it with the new Sprite Link 2, making it so that you can just run one of it, making just a way more consistent and fluent deck experience. Crystal Huggy Fabrics Band, it's a little bit surprised that they hit this card now, because it's not really doing anything worthwhile for now. The only thing remotely relevant is the handship bounce line in Diva Sprite, but now with Frogs being dead, basically, it's not really worth it to go for that anymore. And it was like still in the Brave Sprite Punk list. It was still a very good card, but this deck basically did not get played whatsoever. So this Forbidden, I guess it's future proving, because this card is always going to be strong, but it's not really that big of a deal, and it just makes Hand Trap Sprite a little less good. Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon, it was definitely a hit. A lot of people were anticipating, at least like in my circle, we all were 100% sure this card is going to get hit. It's really dumb because it's not really doing anything apart from in Punk T Elements, which is not really a deck right now. It does hit Dragon Link, which was cool deck. It does hit Punk Engines, or Pure Punk, which also was a very cool deck. While this card is very dumb and it shouldn't really be in the game because it's just so absurd, it was only really used by like very mediocre decks or like roguish decks, which are actually kind of cool. So I'm sad to see this gone, but for the future of the game, this is probably a good thing. Red Reboot to 1, from 1 to Forbidden. Makes sense. This card is dumb. It should either be at 3 or at 0, just because you can play around it in trap decks by going for more spell-heavy disruptions like Chalice, Called by the Grave, etc., or hand traps. And at 1 it just didn't make any sense. It was just basically an auto-win, though it was one of the few ways to deal with all of these lingering floodgates, which none of them got banned. So it's going to be even more of a bigger problem against like D-Barrier, Sanctum, the virus cards. So this is also like a very good hit for T elements, because this was an auto include in any side deck, and now you won't lose these games where you end on a virus and your opponent has a red reboot for it. So overall, I don't really like it, and I actually wish this got put to 3, so that way that people are not going for the virus lines anymore. But I guess it is what it is. To the limited and the unlimited. Okay, why are we immediately at unlimited? Let's go for the limits first. Here, for the limited one, we have Blackwing, Steam the Cloak. These were just a very good tuner. I think it was a 1 card. It was a 1 card Hockey Fabrics? Was it a 1 card Hockey Fabrics? Let's find out. So this was Steam the Cloak for all of you who didn't Remember, if this phase leaves the field, special summon 1 Steam token. If this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 1 monster. Special summon this card from your graveyard. You can only use this effect of Blackwing Steam the Cloak once per duel. If this card is summoned, was used by Synchro Material, all other monsters must be Blackwing. So this is like a very good link climbing tool. I can see this card being played in T elements, just to turbo out Curious a little faster. The Winged Beast attribute is kind of meh because you always want to go into Garura with it. But this is definitely not a bad card. Holy shit, I did not meant to go there. So let's just go back into the list. So Steaming the Cloak doesn't really matter too much. Maybe it is a cute one-off tagged into a few T elements things, but I'm not too sure about it. Cyberjar is not going to do anything. It could take people by surprise, but it's not going to do anything. Mecha Phantom Beast Lion was also banned for Aurora Dawn and Hulky Firebrax Sins. I think this card is probably not going to do a lot. Maybe in a machine deck, it's probably not going to do anything. Substitute back to 1 with Ronin Totem banned. This card is probably not going to do a lot. But I might be surprised by it. It could definitely do something. Spellbook of Judgment is an interesting limit, making the Spellbook engine a real thing now. With the runic cards being in the game and Sky Striker, I can definitely see like a spell deck with these 3 being something good. Who knows? A point of the Red Lotus to 1 is also fine, I guess. It's just the amount of times you get a point at is going to be a little less. It's super generic and it didn't need any brick like a Judgment, like an Artifact Sanctum. So it was one of the better, more generic floodgates, or like very good going first cards to side in. But overall, I didn't really feel like it was too bad of a deal, just because it is a net card advantage loss in the long run. And in healthier formats with less strong and broken decks, this card was never really a problem. So I'm not too sure what to think about that, but it doesn't really matter. You can just put into anti-spell, you can just put into D-barriers now that we are probably in a tier 0 tier elements format, so yeah, it's not going to be too big of a deal. The unlimits, what do we have here? We have Dynamite Knight, the True Draco Fighter. Doesn't really matter. Cyber Benton to 3 is interesting. Drytron is definitely still a solid deck, so this could definitely do something for that deck. Shooting Riser Dragon to 3 was because of Hulky Firebrax for a deck which was never really a thing here in the TCG. Fusion Destiny and Nadia's Servant to 3 are definitely my sleeper picks for this ban list, because I feel like Invoke Dogma DPE is definitely a deck not to sleep on. It just got 2 more starters now, so you can play like 5 to 6 Alistars, or even 7, 3 Nadia, 3 Fusion Destiny, so you have a shit ton of 1-card starters for your deck. Put in like 12 hand traps, you have 4 to 5 bricks, which is kind of meh, but you have a very strong deck with like a shit ton of 1-card starters, and especially Schism against T elements is definitely a very strong thing to do, just because they usually play all gassy, no real anti-cards or defensive cards, and you can just chain it on any T element summon, and you get to just put the summon back, because most of the time they will go for Kid Kalos or Garura, put the summon back, and now they are special summon locked. So even if you put away a Kid Kalos, they might be able to mill, but it doesn't really matter because they cannot special summon. And DPE was a very strong card, and still is, in a format where everyone was running it, and everyone was running its counters. And now people are still on DD Crows and Ghost Builds, of course, but I would say they are slightly less there, making it so that DPE is even going to be a harder card to deal with, though I definitely could see Invoke Dogma coming back into the format. But who knows? Trickster Light Shades to 3 is, I guess, cool for Sprite, because you can run 1 more copy of it into your deck lists. But I don't think Pure Trickster is going to do anything if you have the decision of normal summoning a way to get 2 level 2 bodies on the field, or you just normal summon Candina. I think the choice is pretty obvious what you're going to do, go for, even with Toad not being a thing anymore. And Wall of Revealing Light, I don't think this card is going to do anything worthwhile. I think that's it for the cards. Yes. So what do I think the format is going to shape up like? Honestly, it's probably just a T elements format for now. People were shifting higher and higher into the T elements deck just because it is so strong, and you get rewarded so much by it being super strong, and you just knowing the lines, because a lot of people are on the mentality that if you play the strongest deck and you are a good player, you will have the best tournament results, just because you will just crush through those first rounds, because you're just playing so much strong of a deck and you play it perfectly. And people are going to play this even more. You just basically lost Fairy Tale Snow, but the basic end board, even without Snow, is still super strong, and you lost basically nothing, while the second best deck of the format, being Sprite variants, lost the biggest boss monster they had with Toad, where the end board was actually kind of fair without Toad or with just one Toad, and double Toad made it unfair, and it just now lost that access, so you have to go into different stuff. I still feel like Red Control plus Carrot plus Smashers and maybe a Gin Buster is still a very strong thing to go for. Sprite is definitely not dead, and it's still probably tier 1, but the elements just got, compared to the Sprite list, a way lighter hit on the deck. And arguably already being the stronger deck is just not gonna look good until the Sprite support comes out, of course. So definitely keep that in mind. Once the Sprite support comes out, the meta could definitely shift. But Ishizu also comes out, so who the fuck knows? Mystic Mind is not banned, so we still have that problem in the format. We still also have Scythe, which is probably not going to matter too much unless because of Crystal Hunky Fibrex. The Brave Virtual World, or Virtual World in general, can still basically play the same game plan. So I'm definitely going to test that out a bit. Because the Elements game plan can already be decided on, like, okay, I'm just gonna go for the coin flip and see if I win the die roll, because the deck has an insane matchup against that going first. And if you are able to optimize the like the defensive slots in the main deck, maybe put in a few more, go for like 6 to 9 and still end on Scythe Lock consistently, this might be a very good anti-meta deck in a sense, because the Virtual World engine itself can probably beat a Sprite board now, just with Double Toad not being in the meta anymore. And against the Elements, if you win the die roll, you basically win the matchup, the match, just because as long as you don't break, of course, which is still a Virtual World problem, just because they have no way to interact with your Scythe Lock, apart from Huffness. So definitely a very good ban list for Virtual World, just because Snow loss is not really too bad or too big of a deal. And most importantly, Sprite is probably the worst matchup for the deck, and it just got hit the hardest out of any decks. So definitely a very interesting point for all of you Virtual players out there. I'm going to test the deck, and I'm definitely going to give you an updated deck list on both Virtual and my Sprite list, which I've been cooking up on the work. I was just theory crafting at work all day and just was waiting to get home. I definitely don't think it's gone. Sprite is still a very strong list. But we are probably heading into a T Elements format. So I hope you guys are all buckled up for Kid Carlos chaining 1, Murdy chaining 2, Mill 8. Feel great. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Class is dismissed. You are free to leave. Professor Sunreis out. Peace.